As a consumer, you have never had more power to protect your data than ever before. But with that has created a conundrum for companies trying to crack the code to create a better customer experience. Well, a fascinating new study has just come out, an international study that took a good hard look at how consumers and brands can build better relationships. The creators of this study, Mark Schull from Marketing IQ, and Michael Fisher, the CEO of 3Radical, are here to discuss. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, Rafer.
My pleasure.
Mark, let's start with you. One of the many things that you sought to identify in this study was identifying those who want to build a relationship with brands versus those whose business is for sale. Can you expound on that?
So for years, we've always been faced with a dilemma with a lot of the marketers we've worked with where they know that they're over discounting. They know they're leaving money on the table with 40, 50, 60, 70% discounts, and they just don't know how to ratchet that back. And so one of the things we wanted to capture with this research was understanding those dynamics. And what we found is, the vast majority, 8 out of 10 people were looking to engage for multiple reasons. One, yes, they wanted some discounts, but they were also willing to engage for other non-incentive reasons. And so when we took apart, all those different reasons, we found a larger group of people that were willing to engage and connect with the brand because they wanted to feel closer, they wanted to better understand the products, they wanted to be connected to the brand. And that audience was actually significantly bigger than those that were shopping their business. Now, in fairness, those that are shopping their business it's about a quarter of the audience that's out there. And so as brands look to figure out where their long-term growth and value is coming from, it's not the people that are looking for the lowest bidder constantly. It's the people that are not only willing to engage with them, but buy long-term, but without those heavy discounts. And so for brands looking to figure out how to make their businesses successful in a challenging time, there's extra margin there for them to capture, and it's definitely worth the investment.
Michael, I was surprised reading the study how many more consumers were interested in building a relationship with a brand versus just finding discounts. What was your reaction?
I found that the results were fascinating, but I was anticipating some of that. If you go back into the history of direct marketing, much of what has happened has been focused on a compelling call to action. Quite often that compelling call to action is a discount, a sale, something that is going to give somebody a feeling that they've gotten a good value for the dollar they're spending. The challenge today, there's so many of those calls to action coming from so many channels in a discoordinated fashion or uncoordinated fashion. The consumer is overwhelmed with calls to action to the point where they're just shutting stuff off. Forrester talks about about 70% of us are now looking at ways to lock people out of our web experiences because we don't want to be followed around anymore. So I'm finding that people are going back and saying point blank, they want to be proud of the brands that they engage with. They want to be proud of the decisions that they make. And that doesn't always mean I want to get something on sale.
So Mark, how do companies build relationships with brands? I mean, is Philip Knight going to have to send me a signed birthday card? I mean, what do they do?
Well, I'm sure you wouldn't say no to that. But we found that, and none of this is surprising. I think it's really the nuances of what we found and the details, the relationships between the different elements that I think is really interesting reading. And what we found is, like most consumers, we like to interact with our favorite brands through multiple means. Right now, different audiences prefer maybe social media, and other audiences prefer just an in-store experience. Some like taking quizzes and surveys. Some like playing interactive games. It really depends on the audience, and some of them will follow the demographics that you would expect. Right, elderly people are not so much into the online experience as much as younger audiences are, but that's not entirely true, and there are definitely some nuances. So to answer your question, brands need to be where consumers want to engage with them. They need to offer the types of reasons to engage with them. And that's not just the incentive to buy something. We found a huge number of consumers like to engage with their favorite brands outside of that transaction event. So what we see is a lot of brands don't actually offer much of that. Yes, you can follow them on social media, but their content's all about the next sale, right? We saw huge numbers, well over half of the audiences that actually wanted to engage to learn about other products, to, that post-shopping experience about how to use the things they already had, to repurpose it. They liked reading their newsletters. And these are things that marketers, I think, know, and we see to some degree these things exist in their programs, but they're always third-class considerations that when we think about the percentages of people that we found in our research that say, I want to engage outside of a sale, I want to give you my data without you giving me an incentive, I'm telling you how you can make your loyalty program more effective, which is all covered in this research. And then we see what marketers are doing, and sometimes we see lip service, and sometimes we don't even see that. When we see some of the market leaders, the ones that have really dominant presences, they have latched onto some of these wholeheartedly, and we see some strengths coming from that.
Michael, one of the things in the study, it says knowledge is power, but gaining that knowledge has never been more difficult. How do you overcome that hurdle?
I think that's a great comment. It's a great statement, and brands or marketers have to start thinking about what they want to do to adjust, because selling is probably not the only way you're going to capture the consumer's attention. You might want to start thinking about serving. Stop selling me, serve me. I want your brand available, and I want it on my demand. And that might mean that I'm not interested in 70% off the chinos that you're selling right now. It might mean that I want to learn where they're made. I might mean that I want to learn why they're the best choice for me. Don't worry about the fact that you can sell something to me. Find out what it is that is causing me to buy it. Find out why. And if I have the ability to bring those capabilities to bear in relation to the consumer relationship, the consumer's not always going to feel like it's just a transactional proposition. They might actually feel like you're going to provide value for a relationship.
Mark, one of the stats that really jumped out, 90% of customers say brands are not living up to their expectations. So what do brands need to do differently?
Oh, it's all over the board. But what was interesting was that, we surveyed 3 kind of common areas for improvements, and then we left some open-ended opportunities. And so the average consumer was mentioning over 3 different ways in which brands can improve. And these are their favorite brands. So these aren't brands that they dislike. These are ones that they've already grown attached to. And so that it speaks to the breadth of areas for improvement. So, obviously a lot of it's for online shopping experience. It's going to be the navigation, the browsability, the search type things, which was the number one thing that was called out for needing improvement across the board. On the retail side, you saw more on returns. And when you think about the situation that the world's in right now, online ordering saw massive increases in Q1 in ways that marketers have been trying to get certain brands to achieve for decades, or over a decade now, and it happened overnight because of a pandemic. But when you think about what also plays into that, the more online shopping you have, the more returns. And what we're seeing is, and we saw in this research, is that really grew to the top of an area of concern, an area for improvement.
Michael, one of the things that was said in here is that you got to build trust to get to the gatekeeper. How do you do that?
Well, if you're going to tell me that you want to build a relationship with me, then it probably behooves you to know me and show me that you do. And if you're going to know me and show me that you do, that doesn't mean when you walk into the store front and sit in front of the counter and a cashier that you know. It might mean when I'm online, to Mark's point, you might need to show me that you know me. So when you build your taxonomy, can you adjust your content to meet my demand in flight? If your taxonomy doesn't, and I have to follow what you've described or what you've defined as meaningful for my experience, you're going to miss the mark. And so to me, building that trust is very much tied to adjusting the experience to meet the need and demand of the customer while they're interacting with the brand in any channel they're interacting with.
And Ray, for that plays back into your previous question too, about it's getting more difficult to get that data and get that knowledge. With the passing of CPRA in California, CCPA is going to become much more stringent, much more like GDPR. And we're also seeing that third-party data sources, legislation around that and regulation. So to get to kind of answer both of your questions and to build on what Mike was just saying, businesses need to start collecting data for themselves. And it's how they collect that data that's important. So you want it to be transparent. What's it going to be used for? I don't want you doing something that is out of left field. I want to know what you're collecting. I want to be aware of you collecting it. So not something that you maybe bought somewhere else or you extrapolated in a way that I never would have guessed you would have. It needs to be very directly related to the value proposition of the business. So if you're selling, pizza at an Italian restaurant and you start asking about toppings, it's pretty clear cut. If you start asking about their political affiliation, especially in today's market, people are going to start scratching their head and saying, hold on, why do you want that? And where is it going to go? And so the clarity is important. And then that trust factor, you're seeing more and more, privacy policies that say, here's how I'm getting the data. I'm not selling it. I give you a chance to remove it. So it really puts the consumer in that place of control, so that not only are they own gatekeeper, but they're the master of their own destiny.
Even if you look at the things that we're talking about here and what Mark is saying, how many times do you hit a website where the cookie policy is put in front of you if you want to actually enter it and have the best experience, but your only option is to accept it? I don't want to accept it. I don't want to have you tell me what I have to do with my data. Let's look at with the Department of Justice in the investigation here. All of these browsers are driving their traffic to Google, and then Google's paying them a percentage of the overall revenue generated from that traffic. Really? You're going to do that to me? I didn't give you that approval. It's my data. You want me to trust you, get rid of the legalese, stop this. I have to accept your cookie policy, make it that I have a preference, right? And then I don't want to know that my data is going to another browser. I don't want to know that my data is going to Google. If I'm interacting with you, then I want my data with you.
Well, in my opinion, if you're a business owner, this study is a must read. I encourage you to go check it out. Michael Fisher, Mark Schull, thank you both for joining me to discuss.
Thank you for having us, Rafer.